This is an emergency edition of Countdown. I'm Keith Olbermann. Trump is having them ask candidates for jobs in his administration's FBI field stations away from D.C. what is probably the most chilling question ever asked by anybody in any government of the United States. Quote, who is your real boss? This is, if you do not know, in the Washington Post's brief, damning, almost, despite everything, unbelievable, nightmarish report posted Saturday night. The Post is quoting applicants for the FBI and other top national security positions, and they hint some of these people who were in these organizations were dismissed and were being the opportunity to return to work, quoting them as saying they had been asked these questions. At least 2 FBI applicants were asked at least 2 questions out of George Orwell or the Soviet Union or Nazi Germany. 1, you heard it. Who is your real boss? If you need more, don't worry, there is more. The other question, who were the real patriots on January 6th? You have to answer these questions correctly from the Trump point of view to get a job at the FBI. We know through the Post's reporting of at least 2 other questions asked of those being interviewed for some kind of leadership positions within other aspects of the Trump national security apparatus in Washington. They are told to answer yes or no to each. Question 1, was January 6th an inside job? Question 2, was the 2020 presidential election stolen? Presumably with 2 L's. At least these 2 applicants cited in the Post story told their interviewers no, and neither was hired. The asking of these questions, just the asking, let alone the answers, let alone the implications that it is anything but political science fiction to conclude that some people have already answered yes and are now moving into roles at the FBI and other law enforcement and other national security organizations. Just asking those questions signals the end of democracy. Because if today you can ask candidates for federal law enforcement positions to swear personal loyalty to their real boss, and if today you can ask candidates for these same positions to insist that lies about January 6th and the 2020 election are the truth and that the truths are lies, then tomorrow you can make it illegal to answer that the 2020 election wasn't stolen. And then next week you can make it illegal to publish or broadcast that the 2020 election wasn't stolen. And then the week after that, you can put anybody who does so in prison. The slow, incremental submersion into this quicksand is asking the would-be leaders of the FBI to swear to lies and fiction and fantasy and perversion of reality, punishing people for refusing to do any of that. That is only the quick, terrible, final step. Some of us have been warning we would get here. We have been warning that the creature at the head of this movement is not just unstable, quirky, populist, selfish, self-indulgent, not just insane, but criminally insane and homicidally insane and ultimately, conceivably, genocidally insane. Some of us have been warning about this for a decade. We have been shunned, mocked, and marginalized. We have been told Trump is not a subhuman psychotic, not a terrorist, not a mass murderer. He's just popular. We were right, and if there was any remaining doubt, it ended last night. And those who doubted and those who told us otherwise were and are wrong. And it will cost all of us our form of government. Some of those who told us we were wrong have even come to understand this since just January 20th. Some of them have just come to understand this since reading the Post's article last night. Some of them will not understand any of it until they are being led away in handcuffs, or worse. And so I would like to mention here, while it is still legal to mention here, that we are here now on the precipice as it crumbles beneath us, in large measure, probably in the decisive final measure, because of the people who both sidesed us and whatabouted us, who both sides and whatabouted this country, figuratively and probably literally, to death. Attorney General Merrick Garland and former President Joe Biden, who refused to recognize that the danger was not in breaking the ritualistic imbecilities of Department of Justice norms or not getting back to normality as soon as possible. The danger was in not vigorously and immediately prosecuting Trump and taking any measures available to imprison him for the rest of his life and imprison these creatures who now ask the successors to Garland's own employees, who's your real boss? Garland and Biden helped kill our country. David Zaslav, head of Warner Brothers Discovery, and his minion Chris Licht, who neutered CNN to make money. Not decisive by any stretch of the imagination, but neutering CNN accelerated the both sides' landslide. David Zaslav and Chris Licht helped kill our country. Jake Tapper and Dana Bash of CNN, who refused to demand the right to fact-check Trump in the debate last summer as he lied literally without interruption for 90 minutes. Tapper and Bash, who helped kill our country. Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, who 2 weeks after the election went to Florida to prostrate and prostitute themselves in front of Trump. Scarborough and Brzezinski helped kill our country. Mark Zuckerberg, the spineless head of Facebook and a series of failed related websites, who, with terror written across his face, has guaranteed Trump that he and his liars could lie all they wanted to on all of his platforms. Mark Zuckerberg, who helped kill our country. Joe Kahn, executive editor, and A.G. Sulzberger, publisher of the New York Times, who made sure every cowardly, non-committal headline slapped above the work of their writers, the courageous work and the cringing work alike, would never convey malice, who would never specify danger, which would never warn readers, headlines, and two men, Kahn and Sulzberger, who helped kill our country. Mitt Romney, former U.S. Senator and governor, who 9 years ago attacked Trump, then appeased him in hopes of becoming Secretary of State, who 5 years ago attacked me in print because I called Trump a terrorist in the months before the 2020 election, who 4 months after he called me a terrorist found himself pinned inside the Capitol by Trump's terrorists, and who still would never call Trump what he is. Mitt Romney, who helped kill our country. Countless nominal Democrats who, since the election or since the inauguration or both, have sought to find compromise or move towards bipartisanship with Trump and an evil machine that wants you to say only one thing. Not bipartisan this, compromise that. They want just one thing from you. You are my real boss. Chuck Schumer, who used the phrase "stop the steal" last week. I guess he thought it was funny. John Fetterman, Eric Adams, Mark Kelly, Akeem Jeffries, Chris Coons, nearly all of them in that party, to some degree, great or small, briefly or still in progress. Someone looking to get to a yes on Tulsi Gabbard or Kash Patel. All of them who helped kill our country. And dozens upon dozens of commentators and reporters and newscasters and columnists who I'm sure all wanted to say more, but they had mortgages to pay and careers to consider in a shrinking medium and guest bookings they could not jeopardize. Bob Iger, Van Jones, Andrea Mitchell, Katie Tur, the other executives of ABC News, the executives of 60 Minutes, the new head of MSNBC's parent, Mark Lazarus, looking to make MSNBC more accessible to Republicans. Everybody virtually at Politico, Chris Cillizza, Chuck Todd, Kristen Welker. And we can pick Kristen Welker almost at random to represent the media. For when last April a video appeared of a Trump pickup truck with flags flapping in the highway wind and an illustration, a sticker or decal on its bumper showing then President Biden bound and gagged full size as if he had been kidnapped and beaten or murdered and thrown into that Trump truck. Because that at heart is what Trump's friends wanted to do and wanted you to know they intended to do. When that image, we don't like the president, we'll just kidnap him. We don't like the election outcome, we'll just kidnap the winner. We don't like your answer about who really won or who's the boss, we'll just kidnap you. When that image appeared in public and it was shared by people who were proud of it, Kristen Welker spoke for a generation of journalists when she said, "It is yet another reminder that we are covering this election against the backdrop of a deeply divided nation." Instead of saying the truth, which is that it was yet another reminder that we were conducting this election against the backdrop of an incredibly dangerous percentage of this nation being willing to kill a president to get their way. And an equally incredibly dangerous percentage of this nation being gutless people like Kristen Welker and Joe Scarborough and Joe Kahn and all the rest, being unwilling to say what was true, being unwilling to say what was happening, being unwilling to warn those who doubted that it was coming. But it was coming. And now it is here. Who is your real boss? Day 20. Oh, and two more final championship names on this list. Jeff Bezos and Will Lewis of the Washington Post, whose reporters took this final fatal straw, who published the reality that would-be FBI officials are being asked as a condition of employment, who's your real boss, who printed this figurative crack of doom for American democracy and representative government and freedom of speech. And when they did put it out, even in the Washington Post, they placed it as, scrolling down from the top of their homepage, they placed it as their 33rd story from the top. 33rd, immediately following 3 stories about player trades in the National Basketball Association. Democracy dies not in darkness, but in lies of commission and lies of omission. And you, Mr. Bezos, and you, Mr. Lewis, and all the rest of you have committed both kinds. And soon it will be illegal not to lie. If you're applying for the FBI job, we are already here. It is, in essence, illegal not to lie about the 2020 election. It is illegal not to lie about where your loyalty lies. The Constitution, the law, or this pile of human feces. Soon it will be illegal for everybody not to lie. And that, perhaps, will be about the time, Mr. Bezos and your friend, my former colleague, Miss Sanchez, when you suddenly realize that your own lies to yourselves will have to end. That you do not, in fact, live in some other America walled off from the nightmare that Trump, now with Musk, now with a pliant military, now with a pre-screened FBI, now with law enforcement not just encouraged to lie, but required to. You, Jeff and Lauren, you do not, in fact, live walled off from this living nightmare. You, sir and madam, are here with the rest of us, the damned, and you are just as screwed as if you had actually stood for something. And I hope to God you make me eat my own words, because I hope to God that you really do stand for something and that you have an idea that you have been keeping secret from us. Because as if somehow this were not bad enough, if these questions were not being asked as a litmus test, will you lie for Trump? Will you kill for Trump? Will you be the FBI for Trump? Will you make up evidence for Trump? Who's your real boss? If this were not bad enough, Trump has already gotten around to firing the head of the National Archives, because the National Archives only asked him to give back all the stuff he stole for a year. And what that means, Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez and all the rest of you, what that means is, if you and I aren't next, we're soon. I don't know how long we have. It is why I did not wait till the usual Monday Countdown podcast publication hour and put this out when I did on Sunday morning. I don't know how long we have after this. This, to me, is the first genuine surprise I have had out of Trump and his terrorist gang in at least 5 years. If they are already asking would-be FBI agents, who's your real boss, we may only have weeks. And yet, implausibly, in those weeks, there are more immediate problems still. Now we get to find out if Trump and his Afrikaner President Musk will obey the courts. Musk yesterday was already signaling he might not, insisting the judge is corrupt. Stochastic terrorism at its finest. Trump is already reposting Roger Stone's latest slanders against one of the attorneys general who sued. If Trump and Musk continue on this path, we're going to have to find other ways to make them obey the courts. If they do obey, with an eye toward simply freezing their privatizing of government until they can get their theocratic Supreme Court to overrule any lower court decisions and, the Constitution, if they do it that way, then we're going to have to find other ways to change governments. As you are aware, overnight Saturday, a federal judge ordered Musk and his Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles out of the Treasury computer system until at least this Friday. Earlier that same day, a different federal judge blocked any further destruction of the U.S. aid agency by Mr. Rubio, Secretary of Comb-Overs. 2,200 more employees at USAID were to go on leave. That was stopped, and 500 were reinstated. Again, this administration dictatorship is 3 weeks old Monday. And we are already at that Nixonian moment when we wait to see if the president, and Trump for that matter, refuse to comply with the courts. It is a very real possibility. The best case scenario is that they do and use it to further fuel the Trumpian umbrage at everything and everyone and just building up a further explosion of rage against government, which will itself inevitably come into conflict with the other building explosion of rage for government. There is the very slim possibility, of course, that somebody Trump hired is not a religious nut, too stupid to see, that the courts or fate or the law actually did them a huge favor on the U.S. aid story. Killing off U.S. aid may be hugely popular with MAGA and other morons like Rahm Emanuel and David Axelrod, but nobody seemed to notice until this was in full swing that U.S. aid didn't just hand money out to dem foreign dudes. 41% of the food U.S. aid bought for international assistance was bought from U.S. farmers. $2.1 billion worth. And that market has suddenly been ripped out from under American farms, American farmers. The Americans Trump vowed to protect, the ones who voted for him, the ones whose tons of wheat are now rotting in Houston, of all places, because that's where it was to be shipped out of. The likely irrevocable waste figure is already at $340 million, no matter what happens next. And that's just reality. Musk and Trump, or Tusk and Mump, crapped all over the economic vibes, too. Economists expected consumer sentiment to soar under Musk because, after all, nothing says profits like people who will happily destroy the planet and kill suffering millions worldwide to raise the price of stock shares by 49 cents each. But instead, per the Wall Street Journal, consumer sentiment dropped in January, and it has dropped again this month. Bottom line, oh, what a shock. Businessmen don't have the slightest idea what they're effing doing, especially the ones whose primary business turns out to be trying to convince you that they are successful. You know, like Musk and Trump, who, by the way, are also embracing immigrants while insisting on removing immigrants and reaching out to poor, persecuted South African immigrants. Like Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong, or as we might better call him, as he drives the LA Times into the ground, Dr. Patrick Soon-Bankrupt. One last time before I break on one familiar quote. Not, "Who's your real boss?" This is the quote from the Yale historian Tim Snyder, as the New York Times got him to phrase it. Trump is in the classic dictatorial position. He needs to die in bed holding all executive power to stay out of prison. This means that he will do whatever he can to gain power, and once in power will do all that he can to never let it go. This is a basic incentive structure which underlies everything else. It is entirely inconsistent with democracy. Who's your boss? Next steps. There are things Democrats can still do before it becomes illegal to be a Democrat. And everybody has to swear. Everybody has to swear under oath, not just loyalty to Trump, but they have to swear under oath that Trump had the election stolen from him. There are next steps. Things Democrats can still do. Americans can still do. Those who need to atone right now can still do. That's next. This is an emergency edition of Countdown. Continuing the emergency edition of Countdown for February 9th, 2025. I hope that of the 1,000 times I have said this now, I will prove to have never proved more accurate when I say it this time, that the preservation of democracy is owed less to our efforts to preserve it than it has the stupidity of those trying to destroy it. As hinted at before the break, these guys literally cannot figure out whether they hate immigrants or love immigrants, and which ones are the good ones. While we are still reviewing the hating of this group today but defending the same group tomorrow, how about good old JV? Musk goes outside all the laws and all the rules and installs a 25-year-old anti-Indian racist with what amounts to veto power over government spending. And the guy turns out to have gotten caught having written, "I was racist before it was cool," and, quote, "normalize Indian hate," and calling for eugenics, and then he resigns because he is somehow too sleazy for Elon Musk. And then Vice President Vance, JV the VP, demands that this pro-eugenics Musk slave be rehired. Here's my view, Genius writes. I obviously disagree with some of Ellis's posts, but I don't think stupid social media activity should ruin a kid's life. We shouldn't reward journalists who try to destroy people ever, so I say bring him back. If he's a bad dude or a terrible member of the team, fire him for that. We shouldn't reward journalists who try to destroy people ever, says a spokesmodel for the website that pushes libs of TikTok and other online fascists. And remember, Musk claims X and all of them, they are journalism now. They are the media. But we should never reward journalists who try to destroy people ever, especially the ones who try to destroy 700 or 800 of them a day. I don't think stupid social media activity should ruin a kid's life. The kid in question is 25 years old. When Maxwell Frost was elected to Congress at 25, he was only the 31st representative sworn into our House at that age or younger. William Pitt, the British leader who wanted to let the American colonies go rather than force us into the Revolutionary War that nearly destroyed Great Britain, became prime minister of that country at 24. Napoleon was the leading French general at 24. This idiot Marco Elez's stupid social media activity as a kid was last summer, when, depending on when his birthday fell, he was 24 or already 25. Of course he was a kid. He was several months younger than he is now. To err is human, to forgive divine, wrote Musk between doses, and rehired him. As if Musk has ever shown any signs of knowing anything about being human. And another thing, normalize Indian hate. J.D. Vance's wife, the now second lady of the United States, Mrs. Vance, Mrs. Usha Bala Chilakuri Vance, first generation American-born of Indian immigrants, and he sticks up for the incel who attacked her and her parents and everybody in their native country and everybody in their diaspora. And J.D. Vance doesn't even get angry in his wife's defense. Of course, I disagree with it, but sure, slander my wife, slander my in-laws, slander everybody in their country, slander them all. Doesn't even get angry. I'm just going to say this. It goes back to my point about how we must rely on the stupidity of those trying to destroy this country. I'm just going to say this. If I had to guess, I would guess that the hair that he grew to cover his pudgy, bulging face is not J.D. Vance's only beard. The other cave-in that I should mention on Who's Your Boss, Your Real Boss Day, is that co-presidents Mump and Tusk have set themselves up for the dawning realization by the MAGAs that the $2 trillion that they say they are going to cut may not go to the swamp, and it may not go to those stupid, starving people in wherever land. But guess what? It also is not going to go back to American taxpayers or even Trump sloths. This entire government efficiency thing has been a scam from the beginning. Musk is so transparent and hated that it is finally getting through to the morons who supported him that it has been a scam from the beginning. The money not spent is going to Musk and other billionaires in the form of tax breaks, and maybe in other forms too. Other billionaires, and maybe if they are nice to him, like news media executives could be nice to them, it might go also to just some plain old millionaires. This was Congressman Mike Flood of Nebraska to Bloomberg News about stage 2 of Doge. Simple, just run-of-the-mill comment about how it's going to inflict pain on the people who voted for it. Quote, It will be littered with a collection of ideas, some of which Americans are going to really not be for. But hey, if we don't sacrifice, if we don't understand that this is going to be a painful process, nothing's going to change. My message to the American people is we as a nation, as Americans, have to recognize that this is such a big problem, our debt, that we're going to have to say no to some programs that we like, but we simply can't afford. You know, programs like Medicaid, food stamps, child care tax breaks, by taking educational scholarships and taxing them. Because there's nothing Republicans like better than confusing their idiot base by deliberately conflating governmental debt, American savings bonds, and, of course, the multi-million-dollar bank equivalents of savings bonds, government programs that pay Americans money that they need to, not starve, kind of stuff that actually truly fuels the economy. The Republicans like conflating that with things like your credit card debt and your bankruptcy and the money you spent on OxyContin. As suggested earlier by that consumer confidence note, it looks like even the MAGAs are figuring this out. The Nebraska congressman who wants you to know this is only going to hurt a lot for a long time, and we're all going to be in this together, and he doesn't really care because he's not going to be as together in it as you are. Mike owns 15 radio stations and 7 TV stations, and he owns News Channel Nebraska. But he's just like you and me, only has enough money to never notice any of this. Which swings us back to money and Mump and Tusk and the big thing that the clapping monkeys enjoyed last week when Time magazine put President Musk on the cover and Trump got off a brilliant zinger that he just thought up and nobody has ever used before, ever in the history of the whole world, other than, the 10 or 12 million people who've said this exact same thing before. I didn't know Time magazine was still in business. Very witty. Not just the bon mot, but truly the mot juste, as usual, from our greatest president, not counting the other 44. And some of the fictional ones. Moron. Absolute freaking moron. But you do have to give him some credit for this, the fact that he was not shot by somebody else's husband in 1977, or he hasn't been in jail since 1985 for something he did in business, or he didn't flee the country after one of his bankruptcies. This owes largely to this amazing ability he has to flood the nation, or his part of the nation, with so much bullshit all at once that nobody would ever think to come back to him after he said, I didn't know Time magazine was still in business, and say, wait, sir? 2 months ago, Time magazine gave you that Person of the Year award, and you said it was a great honor? I may be mistaken on this, Mr. President, El Presidente, my real boss, Trump. I thought you remembered Time magazine was still in business then, maybe. So as I asked before the break, next steps, same as last week. Senate holds on everything Trump wants. A Senate hold on everything Republicans need support on. Do a Tuberville. Whatever it is, hold it. If nothing else, you piss Trump off. You inflict pain. You remind him he is not invincible. I mean Musk. That also applies to Trump. And in the House, the overnight symbolic filibusters against Russ' vote, they were great, limited impact, pretty good visibility, at minimum showing some Democrats are not in a coma. And of course, let's flush this idea, like the turd it is, about bipartisanship. Nothing. Not one Democratic vote for anything Republicans support. Have to crash the system. There are no other options. Mike Johnson needs votes for the debt ceiling? F him. Call Elon Musk. You need some money? You do that, Mike. Call Elon. He has your money over there. You need the votes on anything else, Mike? F you. Call Trump, Mike. You broke it. You bought it. Happily, Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries gets this, right? 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 No. There he was again Friday, refusing to pull the emergency cord and deny all Democratic support for anything. Bipartisan this, he said. Consensus that, he said. Not committing to this, he said. There is a possibility all that was a feint on his part to not give away his strategy, but I'm doubting it. Said it before, say it again. No signs yet Hakeem Jeffries is a wartime consigliere. There are enough bureaucratic tripwires still in place to make the Trump coup redux at least grind to a halt for a while and make the Republicans take all the public blame for what happens. You just have to have the courage to recognize the stakes and tighten up those tripwires so everybody trips on them. Maybe you should listen to us. We told you we would eventually get to this point where all the police and all the FBI and all the prosecutors will literally agree with Trump that up is down and down is up. You must fight back. But this would require Jeffries to either come to Jesus and fast, or it's going to require the wartime consigliere that I keep referring to, or if you want to update the cultural reference a little bit, and never mind the consigliere, we'll call it, we need the war doctor. I still think it's AOC. To borrow a phrase that is in the news just now, Representative Jeffries, who's your real boss? I don't know when the next edition of Countdown is going to be. As you know, the schedule now is Mondays and Thursdays, and this is not Monday nor Thursday. It's Sunday. As I said earlier, I just didn't think this could wait. We are now down to loyalty tests. Will you lie for Trump? Will you swear to lie for Trump? Will you insist unreality is reality? All of the cliches that we have ever been accused of using turned out not to be cliches, but in fact, Trump using Hitler's favorite speeches and perhaps 1984 as a kind of guidebook. I don't want to say I told you so. I know you told them so, too. So I do not think there will be a new edition tomorrow, but hell, I didn't think there was going to be a new edition today either. And then as I was writing this up, I thought, this can't wait. This needs to be said right now. So have a nice Sunday, if you still can. I think there's a football game or something later. I won't be watching it. Certainly there will be a new edition later in the week. It is probably going to be Thursday, but who in the hell knows? I'm not going to do any of the cutesy how many days left. I'm not going to say thank you for your time this time till next time. I'm not going to do any of it. I'm just going to simply close by saying I'll be back, if they let me, whenever I am back. And until then, good night and good luck.